Alrighty. Hi, everyone. It's Casey, and this is my critical consciousness project on LGBTQIA plus couples and adoption access. So here we go. So first, I just wanted to set the stage a little bit and explain some background information. So LGBTQIA plus couples are just any couple where one or both people identify as part of the LGBTQIA plus community. Obviously, this is not a perfect definition, and relationships can be made up of more than just two people. For this project, I focus mostly on gay and lesbian relationships, as that is what most of the data and articles are on that were available to me. Just to give you all some context on how many people we are talking about when I say LGBTQIA plus community, in 2021, the Human Rights Campaign did a survey and found that there are over 20 million Americans who identify as LGBTQIA+. I am sure that since 2021, that number has increased, but this was the most recent data I was able to find. On top of that, the US Census Bureau estimated that there were 980,000 same-sex households in 2021. Now, just like we talked about in Dr. Rowan's class, the LGBTQIA plus community has historically been underreported, and even the census does not have a lot of information on which households were married or just living together, as well as information on LGBTQIA couples that were and were not the same sex. Now for a little background information on adoption. Child welfare agencies define adoption as, quote, the social, emotional, and legal process in which children who will not be raised by their birth parents become full and legal members of another family while maintaining genetic and psychological connections to their birth family. The American Bar Association defines two different types of adoption. One type is through a state-licensed adoption agency, where the agency supervises the care of biological mothers who are putting their child or children up for adoption, and the agency assists throughout the whole adoption process. These types of agencies often have long wait lists. The second kind is through a private adoption, which bypasses agencies and wait lists altogether, and prospective adoptive parents actually contact a lawyer who specializes in adoption. The lawyer then works with their connections, such as physicians, who might have a client that is pregnant and wants to give up the baby, and that baby can then go directly to the prospective adoptive parents. Court approval is necessary for all adoptions to be legal. Once an adoption has gone through, then the adoptive parents will have all the same obligations as they would to a biological child, and the adoptive child has all the same rights as a biological child. The National Council for Adoption estimates that 115,353 children were adopted in 2019. Now, obviously, adoption is a complicated topic, but I just kind of wanted to give some background information here. So now for some background information on how LGBTQIA plus couples and adoption have converged throughout history. According to the Family Equality Council, in 1979, a gay couple in California was the first couple to jointly adopt a child. And by jointly, this means they were not married due to laws at the time of the adoption, but they shared equal custody of the child. In 1997, 18 years later, New Jersey was the first state to allow same-sex couples to adopt jointly. And in 2010, 13 years after New Jersey, Florida was the last state to allow same-sex couples to adopt. Now, this might sound all and well, but some states were sneaky and actually passed pretty nasty laws so that only same-sex couples who were married could adopt, and they could no longer adopt jointly. So, same-sex couples in 2010 had to be married in order to adopt a child in some states. This is an obvious and blatant violation of LGBTQIA plus couples' rights, as same-sex marriage was not legalized nationwide by the Supreme Court until 2015. Which basically just completely barred couples in some states from adopting for 5 years. While the law is on the couple's side now, that doesn't mean they still don't face discrimination to this day through several things, but one that comes to mind is agencies that exercise religious freedom, which allows agents to discriminate and reject prospective adoptive parents based on religious principles. So, what does the literature say about same-sex couples and adoption? One research article stated that 94% of participants who were lesbian or gay couples that had adopted children struggled with many doubts and concerns, including how being a same-sex couple might affect the child's well-being in society's gaze, how the parents as a same-sex couple would fit into the heteronormative expectations of parenthood, and even feelings of guilt due to not being able to offer a mother and a father to their adopted child. Loba et al. Discusses the social stigma that many same-sex couples face while trying to adopt and how incorrect and inaccurate information is spread about the LGBTQIA+ population, which prevents them from being able to adopt. This article is from 2006, but it's still relevant today, especially in a political climate that is so afraid of the quote-unquote gay agenda, which is mentioned several times throughout the article. Due to extremist politicians and societal views, same-sex couples often feel uncomfortable adopting or are not even able to do so in the first place. Another study by Gerald Mallon explores how many same-sex couples do not even pursue adoption due to societal norms and the belief that they will automatically be rejected based on their sexual orientation. This article also discusses the current policies that are in place for same-sex couples and home studies. Home studies are the process of a licensed agent helping to prepare prospective parents for the adoption process and working with them throughout the entire adoption experience. Mallon calls for single parents who identify as LGBTQIA+ to be treated the same as a single parent who is heterosexual, as well as for same-sex couples to be treated the same as heterosexual couples. He posits that there is no reason for there to be a separate policy for same-sex couples when they are adopting. Many states classify same-sex couples into different categories to sort of gloss over the fact that they are same-sex, such as classifying them as the classic roommates. Mallon states that there is no need for such inaccurate classifications, and if they are a couple, they should be classified as one. I felt like it was important to present these three articles together because they help to explain how same-sex couples are able to adopt in the eyes of the law, but really are often unable to do so due to extenuating societal circumstances. The social stigma regarding being a same-sex couple and adopting is detrimental to the adoption process for many LGBTQIA+ couples. I thought it was interesting how adoption access for same-sex couples really means dealing with a lot of their own doubts and fears about how being themselves will affect the child's life and experiences, as well as dealing with outside entities' stigma and discrimination. This is especially interesting when you think about how many straight couples have no issue adopting and probably don't do nearly as much inner and outer reflection on their decision to adopt. Due to these social stigmas, LGBTQIA+ couples have had to learn to police themselves and hide parts of themselves away in order to adopt children and have a safe experience doing so. So one study done in Europe found that, quote, equal adoption rights are more strongly rejected in countries that had histories of communist or fascist regimes and have less progressive laws on same-sex relationships. European countries with a more, quote, progressive political regime were found to be much more likely to legalize and approve same-sex adoption. Reading this article and seeing how past oppression affected the present day in Europe in a way I had never really considered, I thought about how America's past has affected adoption stats for same-sex couples and the laws that subsequently are related to that. Another international study done in Taiwan explores how university students feel about same-sex adoption. This study found that a majority of university students were supportive and had positive attitudes towards same-sex marriage and adoptions. The study also found that female students were more likely to be supportive of same-sex adoption than male students. The research also mentioned that social work students were actually interviewed, and that a majority of these students showed to have a low level of worry when it comes to working with same-sex couples as clients who are trying to adopt. I really appreciate that they included social work students' opinions in the research, as most of the other research I have presented has not. I wanted to present these two studies together because I thought the contrasting international views on same-sex couples adopting was very interesting. I think I was surprised that Taiwanese university students were so supportive and positive about same-sex couples adopting, especially when Taiwan has a history of colonization under Japanese and Chinese rule, which, according to the research from the first article, were countries that were under communist or fascist regimes were more likely to be unsupportive of same-sex marriage. Technically, Taiwanese university students should have had the opposite opinion. But of course, I'm glad that they do support same-sex adoption, and it just goes to show you that what is true for one person, community, or country is not always true for all. As for the study of European countries, wow, I wasn't expecting that to come from the study, and once I read it, I guess I wasn't really surprised, but I just never really thought about it from their historical perspective before. And as I said before, we can be very obviously still seeing the effects of America's history of oppression on many demographics, including LGBTQIA communities, not only through the erasure of history, but also through laws and policies being put into place even to this day, as well as public opinions and societal norms. I just thought it was interesting to see the opinions of two contrasting nations and how they compare to America. For my final study, I wanted to highlight the effect of anti-LGBTQIA plus societal opinions, policies, and practices, and how they affect members of the community. The research found several stressors that were consistent across most of the interviews. The first was encounters with homophobia, which would obviously be distressing for a number of reasons. The second stressor was community division, which can include disagreeing opinions on political, social, and personal aspects of identity and the community. The third stressor was facing danger in society due to homophobia and political climates. The fourth was not receiving the social supports they need from friends and family. And the fifth was internalized homophobia. I thought this article was important to mention because it shows how LGBTQIA plus community members face stressors each and every day, so access to adoption shouldn't have to be a stressor on top of all that. I feel like this study kind of sums it all up. American LGBTQIA plus couples face undue discrimination from many different angles, and it subsequently affects their lives in many ways. All of these studies really just reinforce the idea that while same-sex couples can adopt based on the laws of today, there are many other factors preventing them from doing so, especially public and personal opinions and norms. So, it is obvious that same-sex couples face biases and blatant discrimination when they are trying to adopt. They also face discrimination in America and abroad. This is why this topic should be so important to social workers. As social workers, we believe in social justice and we strive to help those who are marginalized and discriminated against. The LGBTQIA plus community is one that has faced blatant discrimination for many years, and we should strive to fight against this oppression while also working with these couples and individuals to help provide resources and counseling. Everyone deserves love, and if a couple wants a child but cannot have one or do not want to have one biologically for whatever reason, and they will be loving parents, then there should be no reason why that couple cannot adopt a child. As social workers, when working with same-sex couples, and especially ones who are trying to adopt, we must remember the past and how our clients may face undue discrimination just because they love another human being. It is important to come into meetings with LGBTQIA plus clients from a stance of not knowing and let them be the expert on their life experiences. I think just really listening to a client and letting them tell their story is the most important thing we can do from a micro stance. From a macro stance, as social workers, we can lobby for better laws in regards to discrimination and adoption access, as well as fight to destigmatize LGBTQIA plus couples and bring these individuals and couples to the forefront of the fight so they may set the precedent for the nation. According to the Williams Institute, out of the over 20 million LGBTQIA plus individuals in America, 58% identify as female and 42% identify as male. Quick side note, but I don't believe that this information is accurate because they're trying to break down the entire community into two gender binaries, which we know is not accurate, and that many individuals identify as no gender, more than one gender, a mix, or more. Just my little soapbox. So 58% of the community identifies as white, 21% are Latinx, and 12% are Black. 30% are ages 18 to 24, which was the highest percentage for any age group, sorry, not friend group. Interestingly enough, this data found that 29% of the LGBTQIA plus population were actually raising children. Now, this is just a small snapshot of the demographics that make up the vast and complicated LGBTQIA plus community, but I think these statistics are important for helping us understand the population and who makes it up. It is clear that the LGBTQIA plus community is highly diverse and made up of so many unique individuals. As social workers, it is so important that we honor each and every one of these individuals and allow them to teach us about their life experiences and opinions. It is clear that working with the LGBTQIA plus population will mean working with diversity, and social workers must not only be aware of that, but embrace it. Because we can learn so much and grow so much just by talking with a client who identifies with LGBTQIA plus community. So, what are some of the current efforts being done to help bring about more adoption access for same sex couples? Many organizations and agencies are spreading awareness and helping bring to light this issue, such as the Human Rights Campaign. These agencies often write articles, post on social media, and much else to help spread awareness for how LGBTQIA couples are discriminated against. Many agencies, social workers, politicians, and LGBTQIA individuals are also lobbying and advocating for stronger anti discrimination policies. With the overturn of Roe v. Wade, many LGBTQIA couples and parents are worried that their rights might be infringed upon next. I feel as though this is a topic which is not normally on the hot seat politically, with the exception of the past few years where we have seen a resurgence of ultra conservative laws trying to be put into place that target all things LGBTQIA. So many current efforts I was able to find were vague and did not list specific actions these agencies were taking to help the cause. I believe that more LGBTQIA and social worker politicians could be extremely beneficial for the community, as then they have someone who can advocate and fight for their rights in real time. I also think social workers can be more informed about this topic and make sure to be prepared on the laws and policies in your state in order to help an LGBTQIA couple or individual that might be trying to adopt. So, what can social workers do? It is obvious that same sex couples and the LGBTQIA community face undeserved discrimination when it comes to societal views on adoption. One of the articles I referenced could not have put it better, with an actual list of calls to action on what social workers, nurses, lawyers, and all those involved in the adoption process can do to help same sex couples. Edward Lobaugh and his associates call for social workers and others to become knowledgeable regarding the social challenges that same sex couples confront when they decide to adopt, employ effective communication skills that convey empathy, concern, and unconditional positive regard. Remember that being multiculturally sensitive and competent includes being familiar with the terminology and practices of the LGBTQIA population, working within the scope of practice and attempt to ethically uphold objectives set by your agency, the Code of Ethics, and other organizations that help define this profession and infuse values of compassion. Know the local and state legislation and whether or not it approves of same sex couples adopting. And finally, be an advocate by being knowledgeable of support services that can help assist all clients, regardless of their social characteristics. I really liked this list because it included both long-term and short-term items that social workers can do to help the community, as well as tangible and intangible things. Although there are so many avenues one could take in order to help advocate, spread awareness, and take action, this list also reminds me of just the everyday things we can do as social workers and decent human beings. While I think policy change and social opinion shifts are important, one of the most helpful things we can do is change daily habits to make space for LGBTQIA couples and individuals and hold our friends and family accountable for being inclusive and welcoming of all loves. In conclusion, I hope this presentation has brought some new information and awareness to you, and that hopefully people will be more willing to help advocate for same-sex couples and their access to adoption. Although these couples do face hard things, they are strong and resilient demographic that deserve to be able to raise children with love and be who they are. No one should be barred from getting to have their own child just because of who they love, and I hope that as social workers, we can help fight for the rights of these couples. Thank you guys so much for watching. Also, I just want to state that this was a topic that was new to me, so if I stated something incorrectly, I apologize, and please let me know so that I can improve. And if you have any comments or questions about anything I spoke about during this presentation, please feel free to comment down below because this will be on Canvas. And I also just wanted to say I apologize for my sniffling and throat clearing. I ate a really spicy quesadilla right before this, and I shouldn't have done that, so I apologize, and thank you guys again. Here are my resources. And continued. Alrighty. Thank you guys.